These people will look at a scenario in which a second Pacific War happens before it begins, Bolivia and Peru. Bolivia decides to make a claim on what they used to have, their old lands in Peru. The northern part was down to here. Somewhere in this area, they decide to relay their claims. And then they send an ultimatum to Chile saying, you return some of these lands or we will take it by force. And Chile refuses, with war being declared on Chile. And Chile's not ready yet, but when they're ready, they're going to pack a punch. Because they're one of the best militaries in South America, with some of the most trained. With them leaving troops on Argentina's border and Brazil's border, because, well, Brazil gives a lot of weapons to Chile, along with Israel and the United States and a few other nations. And so, the forces enter at midnight on, let's say, a day at midnight. With most of the nations not liking this, although I had to get rid of an alliance, because there's an alliance including both Chile and, well, Peru, that would make sense, would it? Within a week, the front line has moved south quite a bit. With their enemies becoming confident, they can probably defeat them. But Chile has decided to and go behind the front line. But most of the forces get out of there with a small encirclement being created of 5,000 men, which are now taken prisoner or captive. But at this point, this is where Argentina decides to join, seeing that if Chile falls, well, they'll have aggressive neighbors who want to expand and possibly want to expand into them. With Argentina mobilizing, but once they start mobilizing, Bolivia declares war. Why? Because they did. Fearing it. With them promising Paraguay some Argentinian lands if they join them. And Paraguay takes the offer, which has really just escalated the war. And so once they escalated it, they decided to send forces there. Hey, escalated, the word I sometimes forget. What it's called. With them moving into the panhandle of Argentina, and they managed to occupy these lands. With them having a few breakthroughs in northern Argentina, because it's not the most important lands. With them eventually having a front line like this, which starts to stalemate out. So to get a victory, while the War of the Pacific has become the South American War, they decide to go into, well, Ecuador, to show that they're actually winning this Pacific War by bringing another Pacific nation in and quickly capturing the city of Quito and thinking they were going to win when Colombian forces enter. But don't worry, Colombia entered their forces into Ecuador and weren't necessarily secured on one front. And they're also in the middle of mobilizing. With, well, a breakthrough in the Chile front, down the coast. Don't ask me how they're having this many victories spread so thin. With them getting pushed back out of Quito by... In the second battle of Quito is encircled and they're kicked out. But seeing this opportunity, Venezuela joins. And they also bring in, the War of the Pacific has really escalated. Which leads to them joining, and so on and so forth. With Venezuelan forces moving into the northern part of, well, Colombia and central part. And they also move into the Essequibo region of, well, Guyana. And while this happens, Suriname starts moving because they also claim territory. With the third battle breaking out of Quito soon. With them now in firing distance of destroying the city. With Ecuador being forced to surrender, they make a spearhead up north. And well, with Peru's forces out of the south, Argentina and Chile decide to make an offensive up the Chilean coast. And they even encircle some forces, but only like 4,000. Which is good. Better than nothing. But the war in Colombia is about to end, with them capturing many major areas, with Brazil eyeing the conflict and seeing should they join in. They can see the struggle in the northern Argentina. They see a struggle in northern Chile. But should they intervene? With a border patrol making sure that Brazil doesn't do anything, accidentally crossing the border, and this group shoots a Brazilian soldier. This really angers the Brazilian government, which is partially mobilized, not fully yet, into joining the war. The only thing is, they're not really as prepared up in the northern by Venezuela. And not really that well by Suriname. But good enough that once they get pushed back a bit, it gets stalemated out. And they get pushed quite a bit back here. And while the Chilean front, eventually they managed to have this part occupied. And while Bolivia invades, but like at this point, the war is kind of over. With Paraguay starting to get invaded. And they eventually become the first nation to surrender. And they then become the first nation to surrender. And while Brazil, with the help of Argentinian and Chilean forces, managed to push the Peruvians and Bolivians back to only occupying a fraction of the land they did. And I'm still trying to claim victory in this war. As they move in, and now this is what their boundary looks like. With Brazil saying we're going up north right now, their forces, they focus on kicking a new nation out. Suriname. And while they're not trying to anger Venezuela too much, so Venezuela doesn't decide to start an offensive at the same time. So they don't try to make any encirclements or do anything too risky. So Venezuela just holds their front line. But as you know, with every offensive, there's bound to be landfall. Or at least that's what the mappers say. With them moving out and creating two spearheads which quickly become a bulge. But nothing has yielded out of it as it took really long. With them now ready to go after Venezuela, so they decide to start an offensive south of Venezuela. South of Venezuela. South of Venezuela, they start the offensive, so let's see how it goes. Right here, they start to move into Colombia. And move towards the border of Venezuela, and they kick Venezuela out of the Essequibo region, denying their claim. With them starting an offensive in the north. With Venezuela asking for help, so Peru sends them. But even then, Venezuela with the support makes this much of an advance. With them moving in on this side of the border. With them trying to re-liberate Colombia. With them managing to take Bogota, the capital, into an encirclement and then take it. And now they cut off Peru from sending supplies. And Venezuela withdraws to its border trying to defend it. With them making an offensive here, which quickly takes the capital of Venezuela. And then they do a spearhead like that, which allows this. But with Peru losing quite a bit of forces here, well, the work of Chile starts their own offensive, seeing that they have a chance now. As they have enough troops to make their offensive, which took them a while. Who knows why, because it did. And now they decide to focus on Bolivia, with them also focusing on kicking them out of Paraguay. Why Paraguay? Because they can. And well, they move here. But this is where Brazil starts his offensive, saying we will move in. Because Brazil is definitely the strongest in South America. With Brazil deciding their best move is to help kick them out of their border. And then Brazil says we will work on Peru, so you guys work on Bolivia. With Peru in trouble because it's starting to lose, people are not happy about this, and they blame Peru. Hey, this sounds like the First World War, but if it was South America only. With them managing to get to here, but they get stuck in a stalemate, so they start sending forces here. And Sucre is captured, and La Paz is captured. Don't know which is which. Or I just put randomly on the map, because I know I got Sucre wrong. And while Brazil has enough forces to help finish this, with them moving in with Chile and Argentina launch an offensive. Many people call them the savior of the war, with Peru surrendering. Let's see how the war goes with the peace treaty. Did they make a bad mistake, or was it really that bad? The nation losing quite a bit of land, with Paraguay turning really weird looking, and Bolivia, Peru, Venezuela, and Suriname. They all lost land, while the rest of the nations gained an amount of land. With Colombia gaining land, Guyana, Brazil, Chile, and Argentina. With Argentina not getting any from there. Weird, I didn't give them it. But all the nations are now happy in South America. And maybe it's great to see South America have some conflict. South America is always ignored in these kinds of videos. It's like people don't like South America fighting. And then South America decides to return the borders back to the way it was. No, it doesn't. But you would find that entertaining if it did. And that's all for today's video. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Wild Mapper out, but non-delete subscribe. Bye, guys!